Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Star Flames. In this video, we're gonna talk about Kris Jenner wanting daughter Khloe Kardashian to start a podcast. When I tell you that this woman, she lives salaciously and vicariously through her kids, like you'll have no idea how much she does this a lot. And not only that, we know Kris Jenner, she's very scandalous, honey. She is. Because the mere fact that she wants to, get her daughter to hook up with her son in law, Scott Disick, that is hella scandalous. Now, I have seen in cases wherein I've mentioned or referred to Scott Disick as Kris Jenner's son-in-law, and people are like, he was never married to Kourtney. Can't be the son-in-law. And I'm like, where are you? Where have you been when it comes to legalities? Scott and Kourtney were together for more than 5 years, so on the judicial status, it's a common law relationship. So Scott can get the same title as though he and Kourtney was married, okay? So just wanted to point that out to you guys for the people who have been, telling me Scott is not Kris' son-in-law. Like, remember common law, relationship law. Let's leave that at that and move on to what we're here to talk about, shall we? Now, we know that when it comes to Kris Jenner, money is never ever too much. And it seems as though she's practically telling Khloe at this point that you need to be doing more. On camera, you're telling the world that you ain't screwing Tristan, because basically that's what they're telling us. That's the narrative that they're, portraying. But if we have been observing, each time it comes to Khloe and Tristan's, script, let's call it script, because at this point, everything is so darn scripted. So when it comes to Khloe and Tristan script, if you guys have been observing, like Khloe and Tristan, they've been telling so much lies that they can't keep a straight face when the camera goes to both of them. And when two people can't keep a straight face, honey, let me tell you, a lot of lovemaking is going on there. And they know that, they're saying to themselves, we can't keep this up for much longer. How much longer are we going to keep this up, Let me tell you, I think that Khloe and Tristan, they're going to go a very long way, because one thing that I've identified, and that is they are very much alike. Khloe and Tristan, I believe they complement each other even more than what meets the eye. But let's talk about Kris Jenner wanting Khloe to do that podcast, shall we? No. In one of the most, recent episode, Kris Jenner suggested that Khloe should start a podcast, right? But Khloe was not, very enthused about the idea, because she feels that she doesn't have her mother support as enough as she would like to, because her mom is always busy with other projects. And that is true, because oftentimes what Kris Jenner does is to get, I've seen her doing this with Kourtney and Khloe a lot. I haven't seen it with Kylie or Kim so much, but I know that over the years, Khloe and Kourtney had to be rebelling against Kris, saying that, they would get them in these contracts and then just leave them on their own while they know what to do and what is required of them. They would still like their mom to be checking in, giving some guidance, going over the contract details, because sometimes, in the midst of the contract, they're being asked for more, and the girls are not normally happy with this. But Kris Jenner would know that that is about to arise in the middle of the contract, but the girls are the ones who are normally left in the dark. So, naturally, based from Kourtney's experience with dealing with her mom, you know that Khloe is not going to be too enthused about this. Not only that, from the moment that Kris Jenner suggested that Khloe should start this podcast, I'm also getting the sense that there's a contract there waiting for them to sign off on. There's a company that is asking them to do a podcast, and I'm getting the sense that it's a specific podcast centered around a particular, topic, for example, crime, pop culture, beauty, relationship. It could be something around that. And on that note, what happened to Kim Kardashian True Crime Podcast on iTunes? Where did that go? I haven't heard anything about that for the longest while. Is it that because Kim has cropped that podcast, they have to come up with something else, because they have to be basically, if you look at Hollywood, and if you want to truly understand Hollywood, you can do it like just consider it to be a box, even though it's not, it's bigger, but just to make things easier, you consider it as a box. It has, four corners, and the Kyliejenners have to be covering four corners, because they have figured out that this is how, marketing and relevance work. So podcast is now a thing today. So at least one of them will be required to do podcast at all times. They already have their hand in beauty. So I think they have that part covered, because Hollywood at this point is heavily centered around, podcasts. They're heavily centered around alcohol, heavily centered around sex. So if you really think about what Hollywood is all about, you would realize that the Kyliejenners are in all four corners. And at this point, it's given the sense that the podcast corner is empty. Kim is too busy, in order to fill that slot. Kourtney is about to give birth. Kendall doesn't F with them like that. She focuses on her modeling. Kylie appears to be busy. So who has the time? Khloe, of course. So Kris Jenner, wants Khloe to do this podcast, because from what I'm gathering, that corner cannot remain empty. And they were able to get a deal from someone, and the contract is just there. So whichever, because remember, they are a household brand first, and then they have their individual brands. So the contract is already there, everything is already outlined, but it's just that, Kris Jenner is switching it to maybe two or three of the kids at this point. But she believes that Khloe might be the one who have more time for this. And because Khloe has, experience in radio and podcasts, she would also be the most ideal candidate. So I believe this is why Kris Jenner is talking to Khloe about the podcast. But Khloe is just not sure, because Kris Jenner would normally get them into these contracts, and once the contract is signed, once they collect the money, like she's moving on to the next project. Kris Jenner doesn't wait for something to happen. She makes things happen. And oftentimes, by her making things happen, the girl feels neglected, isolated, and abandoned. But I'm gonna remain invested in this because I want to see, you know, who takes up this podcast, because it's not if, buts, nor maybe. One of them have to take up this podcast. And I want to see who takes it up and what it will be about. So that's all I have to say about that in this video with you guys. Let me know what are your thoughts on everything I've shared in this video. And while you're at it, give this video a big thumbs up, share if you care, and check in with you all later. Bye, guys.